When I came out to LA and went to film school and sold my first script, one of the first things I did was sort of try and, as soon as I got an agent, was try and find out what the rights situation is with the material. And it turned out that Disney owned it. I just kind of forgot about it at that point. And so nothing will ever come of it. Then a few years later, Brad said, if you could do anything in the world next, what would it be? And I told him about Zodiac.
It's such a great read, the book itself. And I remember when Jamie first gave it to me, I had a stack of scripts that I had to go through that weekend, but I literally just couldn't put it down. It was just a ripping yarn. We contacted Robert Graysmith, who didn't have an agent, didn't have any representation. We got his home phone number and just picked up the phone and called him.
Brad called me and he said, guess who I just got off the phone with? And I said, who? He said, Robert Graysmith. I said, no, you're kidding me. He's like, no. He said, the Disney let the rights lapse. And so he's like, we got to go after him. We got to do Zodiac.
Jamie got on the phone with him and talked about how passionate he was about it, how he always wanted to do it. So Robert said, well, everyone's going to submit an offer this Friday. So fax the offer. All the offers go to the local Kinko's around the corner from me. So we thought, okay, well, that's kind of odd. But, we wrote up the offer and faxed it to Kinko's and waited with bated breath. And he, for some reason, decided to go with us.
Brad and I went and met with Graysmith for the first time, and he took us around to some of the murder sites and sort of educated us about his role in it. Because if you go back and look at the books, especially his first book, he as a character is not that present in it. He writes about Toschi and he writes more about the mystery. And I was sort of as interested, if not more interested, in what he went through. And so he sort of took us through that a little bit. And after that, did some more research and then went away for about a year and wrote sort of the first draft of the screenplay.
Next step was trying to figure out who the director should be. And it wasn't something that we sat down and said, okay, now who's the director? Because we kind of always knew.
Almost by law, if you write a movie like this, you have to go to David Fincher, just because he did the definitive serial killer film. For me, it was almost like, okay, let's send it to Fincher so he can pass on it, so we can get down to the actual business of getting a guy to direct this. And when he was like, no, I want to talk about this, I want to meet, I was floored, I was like, really? You sure?
He said, this is a real story about real people, many of whom are still out there and are still alive. And this book is a very impressive account of all of these events. But what I'd like to do is go back now and start talking to all of these people that were actually involved.
Over the next 2-3 years, we tracked down almost every single person we could who was connected with the case, who was still alive. And Brad and David and I, traveled up and down California, just sitting with these people, recording their memories and trying to figure out what's the closest thing to the truth. That was really an amazing process for me to sit with Brian Hartnell and have dinner with him and sort of, he's a very nice man, but at some point you're going to have to go, so when you were tied up, how did you first know he was going to stab you? I mean, it's a really, unique experience to kind of take somebody back there to that horrible place and then go, but no, it's for the greater good. Trust me, we're making a movie. Why wouldn't you want to talk to us? So it was just it's a really, I don't think I'm going to have that kind of experience again. I sort of decided early on that whenever we would see the Zodiac on screen, it would only be because there was a surviving witness or some kind of police report that really told us what happened. And so there was actually a Zodiac murder that we don't show in the film, the first one. And it was because both the boy and the girl died. And so we don't really know exactly what happened there.
Headlights on, please. And drive away faster. Not super fast, but you need to go speed.
Yeah.
The car won't go out.
And then that's it. Yeah, so that's it.
That's it. Line. Speed. Gotta be looking straight over mag. Ready. And action.
It worked. I'm done. I got everything I need here.
Darlene Ferrin, the first murder victim in the film, the outfit that she's wearing in the film is the outfit that she was killed in. And we had that information because our research department was given access to evidence. And they had her, it was like a jumpsuit. And we copied the fabric based from a digital photo, made the fabric, and then used the idea of the design and the picture. We had photos of the whole outfit and put that together and actually made the exact outfit that she's in. So kind of across the board, that was the attention to detail that we paid on every single costume in the movie.
And action. Got it. Cut.
There are a lot of different versions of what happened. Did they see a car at Mr. Ed's? Did they not? In Robert's book, they're chased. So we wanted to be as accurate as possible, and the end result of it is our sort of interpretation, from Brad talking to Mike Mageau to the police reports that were taken immediately afterwards, to Dick Hoffman, who's the first on-site detective who you see his legs in the movie showing up, and, what did they talk about in the car? Well, Mageau doesn't really remember that well, but she might have mentioned the fact that she saw the car at Mr. Ed's. So trying to sort of figure out all those little elements which, to a viewer, honestly don't matter that much, But we're focused on, oh God, can we get away with that line? And, the fact that Mike was wearing three layers of clothes on a July 4th night is really weird. We got to make sure we get that in somehow.
Hey, Lee? Lee, do you want some hot chocolate or cocoa?
I'm okay, I think.
Mike Mageau, when they found him, they found that he was wearing, I think I have this right, 3 pairs of pants, 4 sweaters, a wool shirt, a t-shirt, and it was July 4th in Vallejo in 1969. So it was amazingly hot, and that was the outfit he was wearing. And there were lots of different theories about why he was wearing that. Someone suggested that he was really small, so he would always bulk himself up. Other theories have suggested that he may somehow have known something bad was going to happen and was layering himself or protecting himself. I don't really know. There were a lot of theories, but it was a little bit interesting to try and figure out how to portray that without making a point of it, and also allowing the actor to be able to move and breathe, because nobody could with that kind of outfit on. So basically it's 1 pair of pants that has the waistband and the hem of 2 pants sticking out a little bit more. And then it's 1 sweater that has the collars of other sweaters sort of bunched up and sewed into place to look like there's all these sweaters on, and then an outer shirt. We had photo reference of all that clothing from evidence. So that's exactly what he was wearing at that crime scene.
Then the Zodiac car comes in, and it pulls in behind him, and it is a Mustang. And then it comes all the way back, and drives in here, and it pulls up behind the car again. Boom, boom, and then we're intercutting with these little bits of stuff.
The real Blue Rock Springs, it didn't resemble in any way, shape, or form what it looked like at the time. So that was one where actually the decision to take what knowledge we had of it from the police sketches that were made, which were immaculate, actually, and incredibly detailed. We could come closer to the reality of what that place was like by shooting elsewhere than the actual place.
The last couple of shots, Mageau kicks up onto he has to actually kick off the dashboard and goes over the seat into the back. So he's actually resting on the back. Darlene is in the kind of slouched over in the wheel well to the side of the steering wheel. And then he walks back, and Mageau moans. And he goes, because he's going to have to go, too big to do it, but he's going to have to go like this, over the back. Well, we should maybe still reinforce it.
When you scout with David, the locations are very important to him. I mean, more so than other directors. Like at Blue Rock Springs, for example, we were all huddled there one evening, and it was dusk, and we were trying to be there at the time of day that, before it got too dark to see, but would give us the night. And he started talking about the murder and how he was going to stage it and how it actually happened and how the cars would park, how he came up behind them and blocked them in, how Darlene drove into such a position that she couldn't get out. And it's an intense experience because David is so into it.
And then at the same time, go across the hood to get Zodiac against the light back there, lit up, just a silhouette, and boom, boom, boom.
Your boyfriend believe you getting those at work?
Can we get a piece of lumber or something across here so that out of shot so that you can be touched up against something?
So this one's coming in your lap.
Hey guys, can I have you both looking at the Mustang?
It was important and interesting to not use the Zodiac attacks like horror movie kills. This was an awful thing that happened to real people. And then they stop. They stop 45 minutes into a 2-hour and 40-minute movie. And what you're left with is what comes after, is that sort of the destruction that kind of wreaks upon everybody's lives.
The Chronicle set was built at the old post office in downtown LA, and the main floor still operates as a little post office. Don Burt did just an amazing, amazing job with all these sets.
Cut. Very nice. Play back. That seemed pretty good. Let's do one a little less and just like take a little bit later. Okay. Just a little. Okay. Take that one last one.
There was a big gag with the mail cart at the beginning when the first letter to the editor arrives. And so there was a demand to create an interesting path for this mail cart to follow that really establishes the entire space in the opening sequence, so you get an idea of how big this place is, and then ultimately how important this one letter becomes to this entire operation and the paper and all the other newspapers that received letters.
Keep going. Stop. Okay. We've got to find that. I think that's going to work. We've got to find a way to square this off, get this forward a little bit.
I remember going down to the Chronicle set and walking through almost an entire floor of a building built like the 1969 San Francisco Chronicle. In the far corner, there's a stack of the day's newspapers of the San Francisco Chronicle, and there is in the movie too. And I went over and picked up one of the newspapers, and it's reprinted every single page of the paper. So you could walk onto the set, pick up like the third newspaper from a stack of 20 at the bottom, open up to page 37, and read the article that was in the Chronicle that day.
We went to UCLA Library and the downtown library and looked on the microfilm first. And then we contacted a company in Michigan who has all the microfilm. That's where you have to go to get the full size. And then I had them pull these images and put together files. And then my people did the final cleaning up of everything and just lined them up perfectly. And then email them to a company in Glendale that was printing my newspapers. And then from there, then I would get the newspapers from them, a finished product. It's exact. You've got August 1st, 1969's newspaper right in front of you. We find something and we just get so thrilled, because it's like, oh, wow, this is fantastic, And the realism, I think, it helps the actors, putting it together, they got a newspaper in front of them and they see that the Lake Berryessa murder article is right in there on the inside page.
It was Hope's amazing, amazing work with the props. And, I passed by her desk and she's like got these old dial telephones from like the 50s and from 1963 and making sure that the time period that they were going to be used was correct.
All of that, recreations of files and documents. David's the kind of guy that will go and finger through and pull something out. And if it's just some piece of paper, you'll hear about it. But we tried to tell several stories with the set dressing and the Chronicle, in particular time changes and technology changes. David wanted not so much for the space to change, but for the way that these people did their jobs to evolve, to subtly show tools that became available as we went through time. So we had a rather ambitious project of finding what typewriters would have been in the Chronicle in 1967, and then showing them evolve into where Graysmith ends up in the 80s.
Dare to dream, right, Robert?
If you're watching for it, you feel the passage of time. And hopefully, if you're not watching for it, you feel the passage of time, just through the way that the environments subtly shift.
The way the cast came together, when you've got a script that was as well written as Jamie's and a director that every actor wants to work with, like David Fincher, you're in a really, really good position.
The truth of the matter is a lot of people want to work with David Fincher. He's a phenomenal director. So we had our pick of the litter to a great extent. And people who were available wanted to be in this movie. I think again, it's not, I'm not tooting my own horn, by the way. I think if Fincher was directing The Phone Book, he would have his pick of the litter.
You know what?
Astounding.
I'm really good at inserts, and I'll tell you something, they're going to save my performance. So, yeah, it's the masters we have to throw out. We got all the inserts. I am good at it. I know you are. Not many people are. Want to know why? Yeah, because I understand what you're trying to do.
I'm drawing. I'm not drawing.
I was drawing. I am drawing.
I play Robert Graysmith. He's a cartoonist at the San Francisco Chronicle. When I first met him, I had told him that I was going to kind of put him on tape because I wanted to study his mannerisms. And I thought, I'm going to meet this guy and it's going to be like this weird, dark exchange. And he walks in the room and he's this like sweet, articulate, like constantly complimentary, kind of innocent man.
Well, 40 years ago, I was one of the youngest political cartoonists in the United States. I actually came to the San Francisco Chronicle September 16th, 1968, and the murders started about 3 months later. One of the things I originally noticed about Zodiac, first of all, that's all anybody talked about. There'd be little groups of people about the office, usually clustered around Avery's desk. They'd be discussing the case. And after a while, I realized everybody in that office was going to write a book. They said, I'm going to write this book, this is going to be it's a major case. Nobody did. That's generally how I got hooked on it. But mainly the guy made me mad. I didn't like him pretty much doing the same kind of thing I was doing with symbols and imagery, and yet with a lethal nature to it.
I really liked the idea that at the center of this story is the guy who draws funny pictures for a living. Graysmith is, on the one hand, so out of his depth, but on the other hand, so uniquely suited to go after somebody who communicates through symbols, through codes, which is exactly what someone like Robert deals with every day in terms of drawing cartoons and trying to make people think about society in general.
With Graysmith, we probably had more reference than anybody else because he was so involved in it. So we had a big space that we did all our wardrobe fittings at, and we had our cages there, which held all of our clothes, and we had our tailors there who were building stuff constantly. And then along the outsides of the whole warehouse, we had all our reference boards up, and each character had a couple of boards, which were all their reference. And that might be photos of them, or it might be photos of different people that we were using to reference them. Like, for example, Paul Avery, a lot of his reference comes from my dad and the way he dressed in the early to mid 70s. I took a lot of that stuff that seemed kind of appropriate and shared a lot of that stuff with Robert Downey so that he was looking at those pictures. And I'd do fittings at his house, and I'd go to his house, and his kitchen would be spread out with pictures of photos of my dad all over it because he was working on the character too. And it kind of helped to have somebody who I knew because I knew how they wore the clothes and why they were wearing the clothes, and it made a little bit more sense to me.
Paul Avery was a really dedicated journalist, often as not in the crime beat at the San Francisco Chronicle, who had a kind of alacrity. He could really hang out with a Hells Angel or a senator. He was a very accessible, savvy guy, really gifted journalist. And probably to a certain extent for a time, the sensational nature of it grabbed him, just like it did so many. Toschi and Graysmith and Avery, they were all just forever altered by their efforts and their inability to actually apprehend this guy.
What? I cover crime in Vallejo?
Avery's sort of the most flamboyant character in the movie. He's the one person who had passed on. For me, that was sort of a concern because I was able to meet Robert Graysmith and Dave Toschi and Bill Armstrong, but I was never able to meet Paul Avery. And so, you want to make sure you're doing a guy justice, and you're also showing a guy, doing some not-so-savory things. And so I was sort of heartened when the movie came out to hear that people who knew him and worked with him were actually like, no, you guys did a really good job of that, and he was that fun and was that exciting.
The film, because it deals with so many people in shirts and ties and that maybe aren't that interesting to look at, wherever there was an opportunity, like with Paul Avery, and you have Belli, you have these characters that were flamboyant, we kind of tried to take advantage of it. So Melvin Belli was a super flamboyant guy, and he would wear these 20-foot scarves that he would wrap around himself a ton of times, and he hung out with the Rolling Stones. And I remember doing the first fitting I did with Brian Cox, and those glasses, which are so specific, they're really thick frame black, very round glasses, like Mr. Magoo glasses. And I remember feeling like there's no way that I'll be able to actually use the real glasses because it's just going to look so hokey. And I remember bringing the exact glasses that Melvin Belli wore, a copy of those, just in case they could get away with it. And then coming down a notch until they were really sort of just like everyman glasses. At the first fitting with Brian Cox, I was like, why don't we just try the first pair on? And he put them on, and it was like it was perfect. And I remember saying, it's amazing, you can totally pull it off. And he goes, Casey, you know me, I can pull off anything.
The greatest directors are great collaborators also. Fincher was totally open to ideas, and he's not the kind of guy who's like, I'm always right. And that's what makes him such a great filmmaker. It just made the process a lot more fun and made the movie even better.
We have two of them here. We can't get one of them on the set, huh?
How many takes do you think, Jake? Wager?
Dude, I'm trying to carry the whole book.
Why am I looking at my watch like good at Ford? What stop are we at?
How many takes do you think?
Hold on a second. 4 and a third on the lens.
15.
There's so much mad about how many takes David does. He does so many takes because there's so much going on in the frame at the same time, and it's all important to him.
Play the last one back, Vane.
How many takes was it?
I'm sure in Bobo.
No, we gotta get you. And act.
They're honing their skills.
Yeah. Oh, and action. Action. I lost the page. Toss it. I lost the page. Cut it.
The cheapest part of shooting any movie is when the camera's rolling. So it's like you do all this work for years to get to the point where you have an actor and a camera. Take the time once you're there to get the right take, you know? If you met Dave Toschi, you'd be so floored by Mark Ruffalo's performance. He's channeling such a non-cop character, and Mark was able to sort of bring that wonderful humanity that you don't expect to find in the guy who Bullet was based on and Dirty Harry was based on, you know?
You know, the guy had given so much of his career to this case that I really wanted to get it as right as possible. So I just kind of insisted that I'd be able to spend some time with him. I went up to meet him, and the first thing he said to me is, I just don't understand why you want to talk to me. I just told him, you know, straight out that I really wanted to honor him, you know, and that I was there simply to get it right. You don't know what Hollywood's going to do with sort of your life story. He was happy enough to let us sort of, to open himself and his life and his family to me, you know.
Cut. Very nice. Once again. Once again. Here we go.
Rolling. Professional insert man.
After we met Bill Armstrong, David said, you know, the person who I know of who is the most decent person in the world is Anthony Edwards. And the most decent person, just from having met him and understanding who he was and how he was involved in this case and what he did, was Bill Armstrong.
Your number one priority is the kids. You hear gunshots, get them down, lean on the horn, keep driving. Drive out the rims if you have to until you get to a well-populated...
For me, the procedural aspect, it's like I'm fascinated by that. And I think one of the things that was really important to us was, you know, people would go see this movie and go, why didn't they catch him? Why didn't they get him? And so we really wanted to show how hard it is to get a search warrant.
Did everyone get the memo of this mimeograph video this deposit?
Cut it. Cut. Stay back.
It's really hard to get a search warrant. You have to do a lot of work and a lot of due diligence. That's something that doesn't really get explored. What is the drudge work that these guys have to go through? You know, a tip line where, you know, thousands of ridiculous suspects are coming in, but they have to listen to every single one. The more you're able to sort of show of that, the more heroic these people come off, because they are, you know.
And then it hit me. The name Zodiac. It may have something to do with the stars. You need to look for twins. Twins in Orinda.
Fincher said, where's Toschi? And I said, well, I don't know. He's probably at home. And he said, well, should we call him up and just have him take a look around and make sure that it kind of resembles at least, you know, a little bit? And I said, yeah. So I called Dave on his cell, and he said, absolutely, you know, I'd love to come down. So he showed up with his upside-down gun in his holster and looked at us, and he's like, I feel like I'm back in 1969.
You all right?
Yeah, all right. You tell me. All I did was
Someone said I was posing at 2 in the morning. Are you kidding?
Was it signed my cracker box?
Come on, never signed it. Hell, the crackers, man.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
What, does this mean you have to eat them?
I'll never eat that.
Toschi brought animal crackers, and I think he wrote in magic marker the names of the people. You know, yeah, he brought them for Mark. I think he brought a few sets of animal crackers as start gifts.
I thought of you.
I know.
And I went to 7-Eleven to get them.
Thank you.
Oh, you brought them for him? Oh,
I just
shoot.
yeah. Shoot, trying to think.
I thought it was in his jacket from the other night.
No, I gave Graysmith one too.
Sorry.
So we're just gonna have to basically split. They're gonna put more traffic back.
People who lived in Presidio Heights didn't want us to shoot there and did not want a movie made that might attract looky-loos to their really, really nice part of town. And so what we did was very limited shooting there.
Washington and Cherry was technically difficult. We had to basically recreate that corner outside a stage in Downey.
The art department designed this amazing intersection that was exactly like Washington and Cherry. So in the movie, it pretty seamlessly jumps back and forth between what we constructed and the actual location. And even when I watch it, it's confusing to me as to what did we really shoot in San Francisco versus what we shot on this set that was built in Downey.
I can easily sit in here. It looks like the kid. It looks like he's got his head in his lap. He takes the keys. He rips his shirt like that. He tosses his glove. He gets out. The coroner's van comes and they go. There he is.
What's street lighting there? Yeah.
There's
There's no way that the Zodiac, who's got to have
He's got flats on like yours.
blood, like a circle, almost like what's on the street. He had to, because the guy's head is there. He had to be bleeding like a sieve.
Just to shoot a street corner and to make sure that it looked like Presidio Heights. When we couldn't shoot there, they did it blue screen. There's no way you could tell that it's digital replacement stuff.
Digital Domain came in and, along with Fincher, did some incredible magic. The result is really amazing.
The approach with Arthur Lee Allen, when we first meet him at the refinery and they go to interview him, there were competing ideas about what he should be wearing because he was supposedly a junior chemist, and then there were other people who told us that maybe he was more just like a factory worker who may have been called a junior chemist, but that didn't exactly mean that he dabbled in science. So we talked about doing a lab coat at one point, and then that almost seemed like it would have maybe given him a little too much credibility and didn't really seem like probably what he wore at the time anyway. So that the first time you see him, he is in like a boiler suit, a jumpsuit.
The casting of Arthur Lee Allen, it went to the best actor. John Carroll Lynch, he was the best actor of the bunch, and I gave him the interrogation tape that we had of Arthur Lee Allen, and he took it in his trailer. And then I remember watching dailies from that scene and just being terrified, down to the way that he would shift his leg and, put it over like that. It was the exact same way that Allen did it. So it's really eerie.
The knives I had in my car with the blood on them, that blood came from a chicken that I killed for dinner.
I don't know of any other place in the world that's like Berryessa. You can see the horizon in every direction. It's absolutely beautiful, totally peaceful, and oddly isolated, even though everything's open.
And how beautiful it was. I mean, that's what I think is so unsettling about it, too. It's just gorgeous out there, and peaceful, and nice, and this horrible thing happened.
It was extremely important to go back there because the way that whole encounter took place, the way that it evolved, had to do a lot with the geography. How Zodiac emerged and came down to them was a big part of the narrative of that scene.
We're at the lake, and of course the little place where poor Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were stabbed. It's different. So Captain Narlow of Napa PD, who had gone to the original crime scene, takes us to the spot. Everybody's looking at us. Everybody but David Fincher. And David looks up and he listens to the traffic. And he gets down and he's feeling the dirt and the gravel. And I think, what the heck is this? And then suddenly he just gets up and he walks around to another inlet. And he's listening to traffic and he has Jamie yell, make some noise so I can see how the sound carries. He's feeling the ground and he's studying all this stuff and what he can see passing of the traffic up above on the bluff. And he comes back and he says to Ken Narlow, who's the original officer on this case, I think the murder site's over there. And Narlow goes, my God, you're right. I took you to the wrong spot.
I mean, if it's quiet enough, I don't know if they get anything out there.
We're going to have to probably come from the parking lot just for sound. And if there's no wind out here, you'll hear everything.
Now, come on. That's fantastic detective work. Narlow was impressed. I think everybody was impressed. I'd been there maybe 20 times over 25 years. Never after a rain. I was happy. The trees are all rotted, and the picnic benches are there. But he's smart enough to catch that. I just thought that was fabulous.
We shot at the actual place the attack happened, but it had changed a lot over the years, and the trees were gone, and the island had been washed away, and there were picnic tables, and so Don Burt went in there and painstakingly put in all the little weeds you see on the island. They choppered in trees and cemented them in. I mean, it was incredible.
Lake Berryessa was a big job for greens, because David was very specific on having the little island that the kids were on look like it did back in 1969. So they helicoptered in trees and planted them where they would have been, where Zodiac comes and hides behind the tree, and figured out what was where and how it would block out, and how Zodiac was able to come up on them so quickly without them realizing it. That's how we started the shoot. That was the first thing we shot.
Lake Berryessa is a terrifying scene, just by definition. You read what happened, even just a dry account of it, and it's absolutely terrifying. It takes a great director to make that scene real. And what I think is real about it is the awkwardness of the entire thing. It's a guy who's walking out in an executioner's hood with a gun, an executioner's hood, and carrying a gun and a knife, going, "Don't worry, I'm only here to rob you."
Here we go, back to one. So we got to hit this mark somehow. Here we go. The exit was great on the last one. The coming around the tree was great.
The Zodiac Hood outfit is the one that there's the most information on, because Brian Hartnell has not only survived, but well-grounded and able to talk about this case easily and had a lot of information to supply. So it's very specific in that he's wearing this outfit that was inappropriate for such a hot day. He's wearing wool pants. He is wearing this windbreaker, which is zipped up to the top with a Zodiac logo in the middle, and then the hood. And you can barely see it in the film, but in the cutout slit of the eyes, there's what he believed were clip-on sunglasses, so that you couldn't see anything inside except maybe a wisp of hair and the bottoms of his cheeks underneath it. It took a little while to get it there. I remember actually having a meeting with Fincher where we kind of had it narrowed down and had picked the one that we wanted, and then he said, "I still feel like the eye slit is a little bit too wide. I want to see less of the eyes." And I said, "Well, okay, it's kind of, I think it's, it's pretty small now, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be good, and he does need to see out of it, so there's a practicality to it." And he goes, "No, I understand it. It's almost exactly right. I think what we should do maybe is just lose one line of thread across the top, and then it'll be perfect." And so that's what we did. Or we added a line of thread. I can't remember. But whatever it was, he wanted to change one line of thread in the amount of the size of the hole. That was classic Fincher.
Bring the horizon line into this, and then bring this around so that it's over her shoulder a little bit more. Okay.
What, Brian really sort of told us is it was very odd. It was very sort of, this guy's acting weird. I don't know if he's going to hurt us or not. I should probably just go along with him, but maybe I can talk him out of it. It takes a great director to do that and to show what it really would be like. That's what's kind of great about David. And so by the time we got to shooting it, seeing him pull all of that off and put all of that in was awesome.
Just come in around this. Right here. Go around. Yeah, there you go. Come in. Maybe come inside of it like this. Okay.
Okay, set it. Thanks.
Here we go.
You want to sit here? Yeah, I'll just try to get it back to that same spot.
Okay, here we go. And record. And action. Got it.
Really good one.
Right away. Start that one.
I heard him once describe directing. It was the greatest description of directing I ever heard. He sort of said, imagine painting, but you're 200 yards away from the canvas and 80 people are holding the brush. And you're on a walkie-talkie going, "You little blue there. No, darker blue. No, darker blue." And I was like, that's Fincher. This case and the subject matter attracts, people who can be of an obsessive nature. And that was a really interesting thing to examine.
What if he comes to the door and I go, "Sergeant Molnax"? Yeah, that's okay. That'd be good. I mean, you gotta be. This is it. This is the fucking thing. You gotta hear this. He's gonna say that before. I know exactly where it is. 5 minutes.
Graysmith's obsession with the case and his ever-growing collection of what his wife calls that Zodiac crap, it accumulated in reality in his home.
So you want it when he picks it? Yeah, right there. Right there. Come back this way.
What I think about Robert is that this is a man who loved trying to figure this out. And that's how I approached it. I mean, he lost himself in it. It was like childish fun. It was not always an adult approach,
And boom down. Coming down.
This case continues to be the defining part of his life and something that will probably live with him forever.
Cutting. Jake, Mitch, fairly broad.
His obsession with the case truly did become all-consuming. It affected him differently than it affected Inspector Toschi or Paul Avery or the other people involved, because He's not a cop. He's not an investigative reporter. He just is the type of personality that obsession was allowed to flourish and take precedent over everything else that was happening.
A lot of people involved in it, and Fincher set this tone, was kind of getting obsessed with the case. Kind of everybody sort of felt like there was an outside chance that by the end of filmmaking we might have solved the case. I'm pretty sure that's how Fincher went into this project, and I think all of us kind of caught on to that and got excited. And sometimes we'd have wardrobe meetings where for half an hour we didn't talk about wardrobe at all. We'd talk about, you know what, there's also this guy, Jack the stepdad, who his handwriting kind of matches it too, and no one's really looked at this guy that closely, and start talking about possible suspects rather than talking about the wardrobe, because it was just like, it's fascinating.
Reed Deaton's. Karen worked at the Vallejo House of Pancakes on the corner of Tennessee and Carroll. Hey, Jake, try Tennessee Street and Carroll Street. Okay. Here we go. David. Yeah, man.
We have like a little 2x2. You got one on shot. Just something here, just for a little bit of the yellow.
And action.
All the different jurisdictional people in play here, which were several, were very willing to give us their police reports, let us see their evidence that they've saved for years. And I know that I was telling Dave Toschi some things over the course of shooting the movie where he's like, oh my God, Mark, I never knew that. I think the police will be surprised at the amount of information we were able to compile.
Cut it, moving on.
The way I work is I have to know what the ending of the movie is before I start it, or else I'll just sort of be flopping around in the screenplay and not know where I'm going. And fairly early on, I came up with the scene in the hardware store at the end. And I said, okay, this is how we're going to be able to give an emotional closure to the picture, if not sort of a plot closure.
That's it. And we see his name tag, Zodiac.
Yeah, it's my favorite scene.
Name tag says Zodiac. And he goes, whoa. Can I help you?
The military blueprints, the same size shoes and gloves, the name tag of our Ace Hardware, Zodiac name tag, the Zodiac watch, the gun shootout at Ace Hardware.
42,000.
I can certainly see how people would look at the movie and say the movie advocates Arthur Lee Allen as Zodiac. Robert Graysmith and Dave Toschi advocate that the theory that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer, and they were two of the main characters in the film. So, by extension, you could make that leap.
Sometimes a movie like this can be used to try and convince the audience of a premise. That was not our goal. Our goal was to tell what Robert's story was and what Toschi's story was to the fullest that we can. And this is the conclusion that they arrived at. That doesn't necessarily mean that we believe that that's the truth, but that's what our characters believe is the truth. And so hopefully we've done a good job of that and been responsible in doing it.
What David wanted to do and the goals and the bar that he set, it became something more. And it had to be something more. I don't think we ever realistically entertained the prospect that, we were going to solve the Zodiac investigation. And, I mean, the story itself in a lot of ways is about, what's involved when you're a human being and you're just yearning for closure and you can't have it.
You sort of have to ask the question, did the Chronicle giving Zodiac all this ink hurt the case? Does the media wind the public up in order to sell papers? Sort of examining that, I think, was a really sort of interesting idea. There's the Avery line, this is good business for everybody but you, and it is good business for newspapers to do that kind of thing.
Part of what the movie's about is how the public bought into this message that was being sold by the Chronicle. Zodiac wasn't exactly what he was trying to make himself into and what the press turned him into. And I think it's ironic that a movie would be the one to try to put that back in the bottle.